It's 2 a.m. You are staring at a screen, scrolling past things you don't even care about. You aren't learning anything. You aren't laughing. In fact, you stopped having actual fun hours ago. So why can't you just put it down and go to sleep? You might think you lack discipline. You might think you're just lazy. But the truth is much darker. Your brain is doing exactly what it was engineered to do. Welcome to the dopamine mirage. The physical experience of late-night doom scrolling is rarely one of pleasure. It often feels like a quiet, heavy numbness. Your posture is slumped. Your breathing is shallow. There is a profound contradiction happening between your physical exhaustion and your mechanical thumb swiping again and again. You know you are tired. You know the screen is offering nothing of value. Yet, the friction required to simply close the app and turn off the light feels impossibly high. This isn't a failure of character. It is an incredibly potent, engineered interaction between your nervous system and a piece of glowing glass. To understand why you are trapped, we have to look past the surface behavior and observe the invisible mechanics operating quietly beneath your awareness. Every time you swipe, you are pulling the lever on a slot machine. The digital feeds we consume are designed around a principle called intermittent reinforcement. You never know exactly what the next post will be. It might be entirely boring, or it might be a sudden flash of hyper-novelty. A piece of information so strange, alarming, or engaging that it momentarily spikes your attention. Your nervous system is highly adapted to seek out this unpredictable information. In evolutionary terms, tracking unpredictable changes in the environment kept us alive. But in a dark room at 3 a.m., this mechanism is hijacked. You are caught in a relentless neurochemical loop. As you scroll, the continuous flood of data requires micro-decisions. Read this? Skip that? Watch this video? This rapid context switching places a massive burden on your working memory. The constant flickering light and rapid shifts in visual information push against your sensory threshold. The brain requires energy to process all of this, and as the hours pass, the cognitive fatigue begins to accumulate. Your shoulders tighten. Your breathing becomes even more constrained. The body is tensing under the invisible weight of processing thousands of fragmented pieces of useless data. Eventually, the system reaches a breaking point. You might experience moments where you actively tell yourself, "I need to put this down," but your hand simply does not move. You remain frozen. This paralysis is deeply misunderstood. It is frequently weaponized by our own inner critic as proof of laziness. However, the ability to initiate a task, like putting the phone on the nightstand, requires a specific neurological resource. It relies on the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain responsible for executive control, decision-making, and overriding impulses. But after hours of continuous stimulation and micro-decisions, that region is depleted. You are experiencing profound executive fatigue. The intention to stop exists clearly in your mind, but the biological mechanism required to execute that intention is temporarily jammed. You are quite literally out of gas. Worse, as the stimulation continues without genuine satisfaction, the brain enters a dopamine deficit state. The baseline drops, leaving you feeling hollow, anxious, and even more desperate for a spike of stimulation to simply feel normal again. It is a state of behavioral addiction, where the action continues independent of any conscious desire to perform it. To truly free yourself from the shame of this cycle, you have to understand the most crucial distinction in modern neuroscience: the separation of wanting versus liking. We often assume that if we are aggressively seeking something out, we must enjoy it. But in the brain, anticipation and pleasure are handled by two completely different systems. The dopaminergic pathways are responsible for anticipation, motivation, and craving. They drive the wanting. But the actual feeling of satisfaction, the warmth, the calm, the liking, is governed by a separate, much more fragile system driven by endogenous opioids and endocannabinoids. Technology platforms are engineered to endlessly trigger the dopamine system without ever truly satisfying the opioid system. They rely on something called reward prediction error. When you see a thumbnail or a notification, your brain predicts a reward and spikes dopamine, urging you to click. But the content rarely matches the neurochemical promise. You get the urge to seek, but you never get the biochemical payoff of having found what you were looking for. So the brain tells you to swipe again and again. It is a brilliant, tragic mirage. Your brain is functioning perfectly. It is just hunting for water in a digital desert. As the deep night slowly fades into morning, the heavy burden of self-blame can begin to lift. You are not weak. You are simply human, navigating an environment designed to exploit your most fundamental survival mechanics. You don't need a massive reserve of willpower to escape. You only need to reduce the biological friction. Putting your device in grayscale breaks the visual trigger of the dopamine loop. But what happens when you finally put the screen down and you still can't bring yourself to start the one task you actually need to do? That paralysis isn't laziness either. It's a completely different neurological barrier. Here is exactly what is happening in your brain when you feel stuck.